Beautiful Alana, as always, welcome back to the podcast. Our resident, beautiful hypnotherapist, a quantum healer. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, Kirsten. Thank you so much for having me on again. I love being here with you and all the other ladies.
Well, we love our chats. We love our wisdom from you. If you follow us on social media, you will know that we are always gifted with such wise, calming words from Alana as she just shares her
Thank
thoughts on
you.
life and her clients. So, just for those that may be new to listening to this podcast or new to you, can you just describe to
Hmm.
us what it is that you do, what you bring to the Light Path Collective?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I work with a whole range of different issues. Sometimes people come with a specific thing. It might be that they're struggling with some anxiety. They may have an addiction or a behavior that they want to change. Sometimes it's just that they feel a bit stuck and they feel like there's something that's kind of, affecting me that I can't quite move past. It might be beliefs that they know that they've got that are holding them back. Sometimes it's things from the past that they just sort of are having a bit of trouble moving through. So I do tend to work with a wide kind of range of issues. But, the great thing with hypnosis is that we can get a little bit deeper, working into the unconscious mind, which of course is the seat of all our memories, thought patterns, beliefs, emotions. So it's a beautiful, gentle healing modality. I love it.
Likewise, and that is definitely something that I've worked with you through personally,
Yeah.
past stuff and belief systems. It can be really impactful for that. So I know that we
Yes.
have talked about it on the pod before, and I will put Alana's past episodes in the show notes. So you can go back and click on those. And we have covered this in depth before, but can you just give us a brief, kind of outline on if I was to come and see you, what would a session look like? What to expect?
Okay. Well, each session runs kind of differently. I try not to make any prejudgments about what I'm going to do
Mm.
because I just want to meet the client where they're at. And there's always a degree of talking in the beginning. We do a bit of the good old talk therapy because I need to get an understanding of where the client's at, what's going on, what prompted them to get in touch, and to really kind of understand what's underneath the symptom that they're bringing, what really is at the root of this issue. So then I know basically how we're going to treat that in the hypnosis. So the hypnosis then tends to be, 20, 25 minutes towards the end of the session in a more traditional clinical hypnotherapy session. But as you know, I also do quantum healing sessions, and they are run a bit differently. So that's more, people would know that as more of a past life regression, although you don't always go to a past life, but it's very common to go to a past life. And then that's a longer session, and we're dialoguing throughout that the whole time. And that's when you get some really fascinating information, just specifically related to you, and all sorts of different guidance can come in relating to the particular issue that you've come with. So that's another fascinating realm, and I love doing those sessions because I never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, they're the best. And so just so people
Yeah.
are aware, like when you're in a session like that, a past life regression, so that's something that I'm more focused on. And the quantum healing, it's the same thing, I guess, but I don't know why we're
Mm.
calling it different things. But basically you're in a trance state. So the idea is the facilitator puts you in this trance meditative state, and then the dialogue isn't actually happening from your consciousness, it's happening from your subconscious when
Correct.
you're in that state. And so when you're dialoguing, it's like, it is so fascinating. And I often say to people, like, you feel like you're making it up, but
Yeah.
go with it. And the biggest thing
Yeah.
I hear is like, but I can't meditate, but I can't do that. And everyone that I've done past life regression with can absolutely hold it and do it. It's a
Yes,
fun ride. Like, it's
it
just so,
is.
I mean, if you're intrigued, it is such a cool thing to do, even if you don't necessarily have anything to work on. And I'm not
Mm.
I'm not saying we should play with energy or play with practices, but at the same time, it's a really great way to expand even your exposure to or experience of what it is like to be in your subconscious and see and feel through that. And I found personally when
Definitely.
I've had past life regressions, it really heightened or fine-tuned my intuition.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I find that at the beginning of a session, if someone hasn't done one before, it can take a little bit of time for them to understand what it is to see with the inner eye.
Yeah.
And you're very correct. People often think at first that they're making it up, because it does work similarly to your imagination. You know, it's all happening up here in your mind's eye. So once you trust yourself, you just have to trust. And I tell people, don't worry if you think you're making it up. Just speak. Don't hold yourself back. Just go for it. I can tell if you're speaking from your conscious mind or your unconscious mind. So you've got a guide there with you the whole time. And it's really amazing when people come out the other side and they're like, wow, I did that. It's like, yes, you did it. You don't have to be a psychic. You don't have to,
No. Yeah.
magical powers. You can do it. You just need the right guidance and the right space holding. And it is a fascinating journey to go on.
It very in spiritually or intuitively empowering experience to go through.
Yeah.
Never done it before.
Yeah.
So reach out to us if that's something that you kind of want to experience. But how's
Sure.
your year kicked off? Like, 2023 was a year.
Yes.
2024 is turning into a year.
Oh, yes.
But how are you finding it in terms of what's happening with your clientele personally? How are you
Yeah.
feeling it?
Actually, quite intense.
Yeah.
Intense. I mean, personally, I've had quite an intense year so far. And I've found also my clients are going through some pretty big things as well. I feel like it's been a year where issues that have kind of been latent for perhaps a long time are kind of coming to the surface and are being asked to be looked at. It's like something happened and you can no longer ignore the stuff that you shoved down the bottom of that, back of the closet under the rug is now like, hey, I'm here and you can't ignore me anymore because I'm affecting you, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. So I know I've had a lot of that going on in the last couple of months, and I've also seen that mirrored in my clients. And although it can be, it can be a painful place to be because often it's catalyzed by something shocking, something painful, something upsetting. But I always remind myself and I remind my clients that it's a really potent place to be.
Yeah.
Because often we're not driven to investigate those sort of shadow parts of ourselves or those painful parts of ourselves unless we really get prompted to, unless it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's more painful now to not deal with it than it is to deal with it. So let's just have the courage to actually look at it. Let's look at it and let's actually get underneath it. Let's begin this healing process, because if we don't acknowledge something, we don't have a chance to heal it. And if we remember that things come up in order to be healed, we can see it like that. It's not that the universe is being cruel to you and wants to punish you and all this. It's like, no, when you get triggered by things, when you have difficult times, that's actually a really beautiful opportunity to do some healing.
I think it's also a really amazing indication that you have grown in depth and strength. Like one
Yeah.
of my bugbears, well, I've got a lot of spiritual phrase bugbears, and we're going to get into one of them in a minute, but is why am I getting tested? This is a lesson. And it's like, it's not really. You've just evolved. And now, like you say, that stuff that's been pushed down, you actually can either see it because all the stuff that's on top of it has been uncovered. And
Mm.
or you're at a capacity to see it. And as you have spoken or we have spoken about, I'm not sure on air or if personally, but that whole concept of healing, I often look at it. I don't know, maybe this is just an 80s child thing, but you used to go to the supermarket and there used to be that charity bin, you put the coin in, it goes around the spiral
Yes,
and then
yes,
it goes like really narrow at the bottom. That's how
yes.
I see healing, like spiral. So you kind of do the stuff at the top, it feels slow, but it's
Mm.
still really important. And you're like, oh, and then and then it gets really intense really quick. And it's
Yes,
like, yeah, because that's the good stuff down there. And I'm
yes.
I'm the same as you. Like just the other day, 2 days ago, I thought to myself, oh gosh, like I really would love to look at that. And it's not as if I haven't looked at that before. The next day on social media, I found the perfect person to look at that with.
Mm,
And so I find that not only is healing coming up really potently, but so are the resources.
yes.
So are the
Yes,
people there to help you really get into the nitty gritty
for
of what
sure.
needs to be cleared. And then, of course, there will be there'll be spirals for the rest of your life. Not spiral as in you're going to go out of control.
Well, I see it as I see healing happens in layers, and I
Mhm.
think it's a similar, concept to what you described with the spiral. Um, you can't kind of skip the different layers necessarily. You look at what's coming up for you now, and once you've kind of understood that, released that, let that go, what you generally find is that there's another deeper layer under that you weren't aware of before. And that's certainly what I've found in my own healing journey, and also working with clients, that the layers kind of reveal themselves and you go deeper. And sometimes it's in the particular, the same issue. We all have themes that run throughout
Yeah.
our life. If you have a theme of self-worth, for example,
Mm.
it's not like there's going to be one healing moment and woo, yay, I solved that. And now I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, no, of course not. It's learning a different way to relate to yourself and to relate to the world outside of you. And I think it's really important to normalize that, to normalize the fact that healing is a journey. It takes time, and we're learning throughout that journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think this thought has just popped in speaking to you. Do you think that it's the word healing that misleads people? And is it a process of healing? Because if we think about physical healing, well, it's done, like
Mm.
it's completed. And maybe, I don't know, should we start a new trend and not call it healing, but call it something like evolving
Or
or
transformation. I think.
uncovering or transforming?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Transformation is another word that I use, because I take your point on that. And I think it that can certainly, make people feel like there's something wrong with them and they need to be
Oh,
healed.
yeah, true. Yeah.
However, I do also acknowledge that is often the reality of the way people feel, that they
Yeah.
do feel that they are, in a sense, in pain, that they feel that they've been wounded. So I think it does
Mm.
so speak to an experience that people do actually, feel does match with what they're experiencing. So I think I can
Yeah.
kind of see the point with both.
Yeah, same. Now that you
I
say
do,
that, same. We need to come up with
yeah,
a new word. Maybe we need to invent a word and find ourselves
yeah,
dictionary one
yeah.
day. Leave
But
it with us.
I think you're right. I don't want to sort of also give the impression that, you're going to be struggling with something for the rest of your life, because I also don't think that that's accurate.
Yeah.
We can definitely learn new ways of being. And
Mm,
once that becomes our established pattern, it's like, you look back at how you were 10 years ago and it's like it's a different person.
yeah.
But I think sometimes it's just, it happens gradually. And so you don't necessarily realize until you look back and you're like, wow, I just don't do those things that I used to do that, that used to cause me such pain or distress or whatever it might be.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Hmm.
the reason why we decided to jump on today is because I was inspired by one of Alana's posts. And like I say, if you're not like, well, I'm assuming that you are following us on social media if you're watching this, but Alana's posts always get such a beautiful response because they are just so grounded, soothing, wise, all the things.
Oh, thank you.
Um, but you were talking about self-love. And then I
Mm.
think we got into a discussion about it, didn't we? And we're like, we should really
Yes.
put in this conversation for a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a phrase I use all the time.
Yeah.
And I think I have a concept of it, but I am so open to my concept of it being uh, built upon, reshaped, reformed.
Mm.
So how do you see or define self-love?
Yeah. Well, I think self-love can be a lot of different things. So I guess I'll talk about it in the context of which I, use it. And when we were having that discussion, I think what we were talking about is something. It was something like the thing that makes the biggest difference to your clients? Or I can't remember specifically what we were
Oh
talking about.
gosh, either can I, but you've got a better memory than me. So I'm gonna just rely on you.
Okay. Self-love to me is the way that you relate to yourself in the broadest kind of sense. And what I mean by that is, what I have observed through doing the work that I do is that one way that people make their lives harder is that when they're going through something difficult, when they've got a problem, they've got an issue, instead of meeting that part of themselves with understanding, with compassion, with curiosity, with openness, what they tend to do is judge themselves, is to condemn that part of them that is perceived as being weak, as perceived as being flawed, embarrassing, damaged, whatever it is. So we tend to cut off the possibility of healing that part. Any good therapist knows, or not just a therapist, but any practitioner or a healer, someone that you're going to for assistance with something, you need to hold the space with love, with openness, with compassion, in order to allow that client to feel safe enough to actually go there in terms of opening up and exploring whatever the issue is. And the same thing is mirrored within your own very being. If you are able to hold the space within yourself, to hold your emotions with compassion, with love, with understanding, life is just so much easier. It is so much easier and feels so much better to do absolutely anything. So for me, it really is this internal experience. Self-love is the way that you talk to yourself in your own mind. That's a really big one. Are you talking to yourself with judgment, with criticism, or are you actually being more curious, understanding, supportive, encouraging? It's definitely something that we need to cultivate and we need to learn, because for most of us, we're not socialized in that way. I think
Well, exactly. So where did you learn it? Where did you learn to love yourself and hold
through the pain of not loving myself, basically. Through the pain of not loving myself. And also, when you understand why you are the way that you are, it's much easier to have compassion for yourself. So doing that work to understand, as we grow up, we're very impressionable when we're very young children. We know this, we're sponges, we take it all in. And for most of us, we learn very early on to look outside of ourselves for validation, to look outside of ourselves for love. We learn that there are these authority figures who know more than you. They've got a lot of power over you. So you will naturally abandon yourself in order to please those authority figures, usually, your parents. So we learn very early on that we look outside of ourselves for approval rather than looking within. So, that's always kind of where it starts. And the experiences that we have as we're growing up, we take on certain beliefs about ourselves. So we can get to a point where we've kind of internalized all of these external messages we get from parents, from teachers at school, from the media, from community, all sorts of things. So it's really a process of understanding, well, where did these things come from? Where did these beliefs that I have about myself, whether it's that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy, that I don't deserve it, that, all this stuff, if we can investigate where that comes from and understand the process of conditioning as we grow up throughout our lives, we can automatically have more compassion for ourselves, because we can understand it's not that there's anything wrong with me. It's just that this is a natural result of, what I took on as I was growing up. So I think that's a good place to start, to actually understand, where your particular kind of issues, concerns, the things that you are perhaps not happy with about yourself. Well, get a little bit curious about that. And through that curiosity, you can develop more compassion and understanding. rather than kind of, that judgment and criticism that we often naturally go to.
So when you think about your personal self-love journey, was it getting to a specific point in your life, a moment that then you realized that maybe you did not love yourself the way you wished you could or should? Like, how did it actually evolve for you?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember. It's not like there was a specific moment where I went, oh, I think for me, it's just more been the journey that I've been on in terms of understanding the way that the psyche works. It's also my spiritual practice. It's taking that move from fear-based thinking to more love-based thinking, not just within my own self, but just generally the way that I, operate in this world. That's really what drives me to understand more deeply, who I am and why am I here. It's all these big questions, but then it often comes back to love, when you're connecting with that deeper part of you, with your spirit, you feel the love that is naturally within you. You feel it in a very visceral sense. And once you've had an experience of that divinity within you, the voice of the ego mind is so clear, you can hear it, and the way that it talks to you. And so it's really obvious that it's not a loving, kind voice, and of course it's, we don't want to demonize the ego. It's a survival mechanism. That's where it comes from. It develops as a way to try and keep you in line so that you'll get your needs met. So I think also I don't want to kind of demonize that part of myself, but it really grows from awareness. You become aware of the ways in which, hey, I abandon myself when I'm feeling, less than, or when I haven't lived up to my own expectations. But we don't need to judge ourselves for that. It's like, have some compassion for yourself. If you're going through something difficult, if you're going through something rough, you need your own love and your own compassion. I mean, we have the capability to be there for ourselves, to do that for ourselves. Again, it's wonderful when other people are there supporting us and, helping us through things. But really, at the end of the day, it's you having that capacity to be there for yourself and soothe yourself and hold yourself that makes the biggest difference, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. The way I have internalized what you've just been saying is, that whole conditioning of we get love, acceptance, reassurance, our needs met on the outside. If I had to align that to something, I'd call that fashion. So there are clothes, there are hairstyles or whatever that are in fashion. And so we're sold this way of being. And so I think for a very long time, that has been in fashion. It wasn't that long ago, like the 50s, the 40s, that marriage was actually probably, for example, like getting love from the outside was more about society structures and family structures and expectations. And then it turned into this whole big romance thing. And so when I think about the clients that come to me, when I think about myself, I would say a lot of what we're dealing with is actually separating ourselves or pulling back the addiction from this fashion that we're sold of this is how you get your needs met. Yes. Whereas style is authentic self-love. And so we look at that beautiful, what's her name? She just passed away, the fashion icon, but she had her own style in America, Ida someone. You'll know who I'm talking about. Like she was in a
Passed
hundred.
away. Iris Apfel.
Yeah, Iris.
Oh, I'm devastated. I didn't hear that. She was amazing.
So yeah, you think about her, to me, like there's fashion and then there's style. And so self-love is like the style. It's the innate. It's that I shall make myself happy. I can hold myself. I think that all of us come to this place in our lives for many reasons where we realize we've been following fashion and never thought to consider style or individuality. And I think that that's what self-love represents to me, all of that conditioning, which is natural and many ways very useful. But then there's a point where we have to say, well, actually, it all does come from within. And I think a lot of the spiritual masters, ultimately, that's all they teach. It's
Right.
that self-connection. It comes from within, then without. And I
Yeah.
agree with you. I have had the exact same experience. When you experience your own divinity, there is nothing like that. Like no person or thing on this planet could give me that
Right.
feeling of bliss or in the intensity of that bliss that you feel when you are actually in connection with your own love and ultimately your
Mm.
own divinity. And so many people will come to sessions, and it's so easy to see it for someone else, by the way, but when they come, it's just like, oh, you would not be in this mess if you just took 5 seconds to love yourself, as
Right.
opposed to seeking that love elsewhere. And
Yeah.
so I think that there's so much work, maybe for people like you and I to do, to maybe facilitate more understanding of and like teaching of, well,
Mm.
how do we get to that place where that self-love actually feels just as good, just
Yeah.
as desirable as the fashion does?
Or better. You
Oh,
know what I
yeah.
mean? And I think, it's such a powerful place to be, because if you know that you have this wellspring of love inside of you, you're not going to put up with being treated poorly by someone because you're desperate for their love. You know, I think part of the reason why generally as a society we struggle with relationships, many of us, because you're looking for the other person to fill your needs, and they can't do it. They physically can't do it. We're asking too much of other people. We get in these weird entanglements, because really at a deeper level, you want their love, you want their approval, you want to know that you're okay. And if someone else just chose me and had me and loved me and gave me all this, then I'd be okay. Then I'd know that I'm worthy, I'm good enough, and finally I could relax. But it just doesn't work that way. And if you understand that really the foundation for all of the love in your life is the foundation that you create for yourself, you're then able to meet people with such greater depth and openness. You're not as vulnerable to being hurt by other people, because it's almost like this love that you have for yourself. It forms almost this buffer,
Mm.
that other people can do what they're going to do. We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to bump up and, be in conflict now and then. It's okay. Because if you've got this solid foundation within you, it's so much easier to navigate whatever else goes on outside of you.
Yeah, and I can't agree with you more, and stress enough that I think the most, well, I've personally found this might not be true for everybody, but and I found this with the people that I work with, the most potent way to flex your self-love muscle is in romantic partnership,
Mm.
to really see if, where are you at in that intensity and commitment and dedication to the love that you have for yourself. I had dinner with a friend on Friday night, and she has been living away for a couple of years. And within our friendship, we have lots of mutual friends. And so over the course of the dinner, she was like, oh, how's so-and-so? And how's so-and-so? And I even noticed this within myself when she asked about one particular girl who I used to be very close friends with. She said, how is she? I said, I actually don't talk to her anymore. And I
Mm.
kind of didn't care. It was like, let them come, let them go. Like I just felt like really in my authentic self-love. But then
Yeah.
when she mentioned maybe a romantic connection of the past, I was like, well, yeah, like I saw him and blah. And, I went into this big story about what it must mean, almost demonizing him to make myself look better. And then I realized, oh, that's not, yeah, like if I really, like I think I've come a long way in that certain scenario, a massive amounts
Mm.
away actually, but it's so easy to slip back into it. Because if I
Yes.
was, I'd be like, oh yeah, haven't seen him in ages, don't really care, like come go,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, and so I love that idea that you're saying, like this, it provides you that beautiful filter through
Yeah.
which someone else's love can be enjoyed and savored and appreciated and celebrated. but it
Yeah.
is not required. It is not your lifeblood. It is
Mm.
not life or death, literally, where most people will come with these romantic
Mm.
partnership issues. And it's like, yeah, it's because you're making his love or her love mean way more than it should.
Right, right. It's literally giving that person all the power to decide whether you're lovable or not. And
Totally.
that's a hard place to be. I mean, I think, romantic relationships or intimate partnerships, that's always the place that's going to cut deeper, because obviously the connection that you have with that person is deeper than it would be, a friendship. And I think it's not that, we never get to the point, I think, that we're bulletproof. It's like
Oh, yeah.
things will still hurt if someone betrays you or upsets you, or, we've still got that humanity within us. But it's just that you will recover so much faster as well from whatever happens to you, because the pain that you may feel is held within that space of love. And again, it's that ability to soothe yourself, to be there for yourself, so you don't necessarily feel alone when you go through things.
I think that your ability to be on your own
Yeah.
is really, oh, this is going to sound really controversial, but I think is it the most potent or most necessarily place to learn this? I don't know. I question how easy it is to learn that if you are in a partnership, if you're not essentially lonely.
Yes, yes, I know what you mean. um I think it's definitely, if you are on your own, I think it's definitely, it's more of a, there's definitely more impetus to develop that for yourself, because there is no one else feeding it into you.
Yep.
And also the stability that, a partner can bring. A good partner, obviously, there's variations in what a partnership will do for you, but a good partner will bring you a stability and a sense of teamwork that you don't get when you're on your own. So I do think, yes, there are um, definitely this sense of like we're in it together that you get in a partnership.
I think
Um,
sometimes even really toxic relationships can give people that.
well, at least it's a sense of certainty that there's
You know
someone
what I
else.
mean? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I don't actually have to look at this. I don't actually have to go into
Yes.
my aloneness to develop that relationship with myself in that depth, because
Yeah.
I have this, like you say, false sense of security or whatever it is there.
Yes. But then you could also say, well, but if you then did start to, really love yourself more, would you still be in
No,
that
yeah,
relationship?
exactly.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
for
So I
sure.
think we all have to, or well, I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, but um, there's benefit for everyone in developing that within yourself. And I think that's really the journey that we're all on, isn't it?
Yeah,
At the end of the
agreed.
day,
Yeah.
it's that journey back to yourself. When you start asking those deeper questions, it's kind of where you just intrinsically know you need to go. And then it's just a matter of getting there, because it's not necessarily an easy journey. And again, like we were talking about with the layers and with the spirals, the self-love journey is the same thing.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
you learn how to love yourself in certain circumstances, and then that gets easier. But then you kind of uncover more. You go deeper into what your needs are, and what you want out of life, and it just is a really rich and vibrant journey that you end up going on. Yeah, so definitely not like a place where, oh, I've arrived. It's a I think a lifelong journey for us to get there.
For sure, because those desires and those needs shift and change. And, as we go through different phases and stages of our lives, I
Yeah.
know that people will be wanting to hear some really practical things. So even though we've said them throughout this podcast, let's just really
Mm,
drill down into if you want to make
mm.
a checklist and tick these things off to see if you're really developing that awareness of the love that you have for yourself and that relationship with the love you have of yourself. What are some of the things that you would put on that checklist for people to be doing?
Well, I think a really good place to start is just looking at that internal dialogue. Um, what are the ways in which you're talking to yourself in your own mind? That's a really, once you become more aware of that, you then get a sense of kind of where you're at in terms of the way that you're relating to yourself. What is that voice like? What is it telling you? Who does it remind you of? That's another one, whose voice have you internalized?
When you were talking about ego before, I think that that's something that we don't talk about a lot, that sometimes our ego is amazing. Like, it's great. We wouldn't demonize it at all. But a lot of our ego, I find my ego has a lot of different personalities, and they are the personalities of the people in my life.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, wait a minute. This voice is coming through. This opinion's coming through. Who is that? Oh, that's so-and-so.
Yeah. So the more we can get to know those voices or that voice, the more empowered we are to decide whether we want to listen to it or not. So you can journal it out. That's a really good way of doing it, getting it down on paper. And then you can just more clearly see, okay, where is this coming from? Is it real? Is it true? Is this helpful? And then once you've externalized that voice, you've automatically put a bit of space between it and you. So you're not fully identified with that voice. You become the observer of the voice. And so that's always a really good place to start. Doing mirror work is also really good for self-love. Look at yourself in the mirror, say hello, tell yourself you love you. It can be really confronting for a lot of people who actually just spend some time with yourself, look into your own eyes, just kind of get familiar with yourself. Often we can run from ourselves in that kind of intimate way. So starting to do a bit of mirror work and doing it regularly, and then just like literally, if you've been to the toilet and you're going to wash your hands, well, there's probably going to be a mirror there. So if you just literally got into that habit of whenever I wash my hands, I just take a moment to look in the mirror, say hello to myself, check in, how am I doing, say some kind words, whatever feels true and right for you. You don't want to be forcing it. But so mirror work is definitely another thing that I would recommend. And then I think really, if you really want to get into it, you've got to start doing the deeper work that goes into your belief systems, just looking at your past, seeing where you picked up these ideas, these concepts, these beliefs that you have about yourself, and then you start working into them. I think that's where the real kind of deep work is done. So I mean, there's a number of different things that you can be doing for self-love, but I guess that's just a few that I would suggest starting with.
I would just let me know. 10:44. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Lucky you just finished your sentence there. Hello. Thank you. Sorry.
That's right. Is that your client here?
No, she's online. That's the post.
Oh, okay.
I wish I could silence my buzzer when I'm here.
Yeah.
I just can't.
My dog is knocking. My dog is scratching on the door.
I can't hear it at all.
Good. Okay.
Okay, we'll wrap it up. Okay. Yeah, love those tips. I would add to that, I think the most powerful thing personally I have found is alone time. That, I think a lot of us avoid alone time because do we really like being with ourselves? What is it like to be in a romantic, luscious, loving relationship with ourselves? And so to really cultivate that alone time, it will teach you a lot about yourself. And you said this word before about curiosity. I believe curiosity is a superpower. Exactly like you were saying, get really curious about where your ideas of self-love came from and how to love yourself and why that's so important. And the last thing, again, something we've touched on before, is I think my journey to self-love was cracked open the moment I sat in a meditation in that divine oneness, pure consciousness of love, which is we offer a lot of spiritual practices, a great way to do that in a really safe and non-threatening way to do that. Two things that we offer, which is part of the reason why we offer them, is cacao ceremony. So that opportunity to sit with a medicine that is heart coherence. And because you're just sitting with yourself, you might be guided by Cass, but you're sitting with yourself, even if you're in a group setting. So that's a really great one to tap into if you're wanting to explore this. And the other one is moon membership, because you're literally sitting there journaling every new and full moon, and you are meditating every full and new moon. So you just get to kind of get into yourself, you know, and be alone with yourself.
Yes.
And learn how that it is the least lonely place on earth. I remember when I was starting my spiritual journey, a very influential, beautiful friend, mentor of mine said the thing that she loved doing the most was going down to the beach on her own. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I couldn't think of anything worse. And because she's so wise, and she just kind of smiled and nodded at me. And now it's like, oh, do I really want to go to the beach with someone? I love going. I've done a complete 180 because I've done all this work. Like nothing can mess with my life, because I know no matter what happens externally, who comes, who goes, what comes up, what goes down, doesn't matter. That sounded really crisp, but I meant like as in like the ebbs and flows of life. Sorry. But I know that I'm okay because I got me.
And you just start to appreciate yourself, you know, once you start to get to know yourself a bit more, you appreciate your uniqueness. I think it's a really beautiful thing. Yeah, it's, you know, everything you describe. I think you can't really go wrong once you start going on that journey and you have that intention that you want to open yourself to loving yourself more. Just see what turns up. See what turns up in your life, because you will be supported in this journey for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Alrna, as always, thank you for bringing that grounded, very maternal wisdom. I always feel like I'm wrapped in a big blanket after I've spoken to you and hearing how you intuit things. So as you know, you can connect with Alrna via the lightpathcollective.com. She has 2 beautiful offerings if you want to work with her. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, that you can work with her in person or online. And as always, keep an eye on our socials for the beautiful content that Alrna shares with us all there. But hope you have a great year. I'm sure we'll speak again before the end of the year here.
That would be great.
But thank you for everything you do for us.
You're welcome. Very welcome. Thanks for having me.
I can never find the pause button.